On March 6, 1944, at 28,000 feet above Berlin, the 56th Fighter Group battled German fighters in what turned into the biggest air fight yet over Europe. In the middle of the widespread battle, American Thunderbolt pilots found something that surprised their German rivals. German planes performed their usual escape move, going into sharp climbs to get away. Before we continue, show your support by subscribing and letting me know where you're watching from. For the last year, this method had been nearly unbeatable. The heavy P-47 Thunderbolt just wasn't able to keep up with a climbing Focke-Wulf 190 or Messerschmitt 109. But on this day in March, something was different. American fighters stuck right behind the German planes through climbs that should have been unthinkable. At heights nearing 28,000 feet, with both planes close to stalling, Thunderbolt pilots started shooting. Black smoke poured from hit German planes as their pilots jumped out. By the end of the mission, the 56th Fighter Group reported taking down 11 German planes without losing a single Thunderbolt. The change was finished. An update to the Thunderbolt's propeller had gotten rid of the plane's biggest flaw and completely changed the way battles were fought over Europe. The story of this change started in the engineering offices of two American propeller makers during the harsh winter of 1943. While bombers were being lost over Germany and fighter pilots sent in reports about German fighters getting away by climbing, engineers rushed to fix a problem that looked easy but wasn't. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine made 2,000 horsepower. Still, the P-47 Thunderbolt didn't go up well. The thin-bladed Curtiss electric propeller on the early models could not turn that huge power into climbing ability. These blades were made to be efficient when flying fast and steady, shaped to cut through the air with very little resistance above 350 mph. During climbs at slow speeds with the engine at full power, the narrow blades could not grip enough air to effectively turn horsepower into lift. Engines ran at top speed, using up fuel and making a lot of heat, but not pulling the planes upward with enough power. In January 1943, at Republic Aviation Corporation's main office in Farmingdale, Long Island, Alexander Kartveli looked over battle reports from England with increasing worry. German fighters would dive through bomber groups, attack, and then pull into steep climbs to get away. The Thunderbolts chasing them could not keep up. The performance numbers were very bad. Early P-47 models needed long climbs to get to fighting altitudes. The Focke-Wulf 190A and Messerschmitt 109G got to those heights much faster. This difference in ability led straight to American losses. Pilots died in situations where better climbing power might have saved their lives. Some Army Air Forces leaders wondered if the P-47 should still be used in main battles. Kartveli knew the engineering issue. Propeller. Effectiveness relies on having the right blade size for the situation. Thin-bladed propellers were good at high speeds where they created less drag, but at slow speeds during climbs, blades needed more surface area to grab the air and turn power into lift. Making the blades bigger seemed simple, but it was hard to do in reality. Every change to the propeller design had an effect on the whole plane. The wrong blade shapes could cause shaking that would rip engines off their mounts. Bad weight balance could create vibrations, causing a disastrous collapse of the plane's body. Incorrect turning forces could make a plane impossible to control during takeoff. Republic Aviation needed propellers with much more blade area that could fit into the planes already built without needing major changes. Two companies were in a race to fix this issue: Curtiss-Wright, the maker of the original thin blade propeller, and Hamilton Standard, which made propellers for many military planes. Both companies knew the winning design would be made in numbers, over 10,000. More importantly, it would be the key to survival for thousands of American pilots. Engineers at both companies worked through the winter of 1943, trying out blade shapes in wind tunnels, figuring out stress, and building test hubs and pitch controls. American pilots were dying while engineers were perfecting blade widths and twist angles. Hamilton Standard's engineering team came up with a totally new idea for propeller design. Instead of thin, knife-like blades that cut through the air, they suggested wide, paddle-shaped blades that grabbed the air like oars, pushing through water. The blade width would be much larger. The blade shape would be almost a rectangle for most of its length, before getting narrower near the end. This design looked rough to engineers used to traditional aerodynamics, but wind tunnel tests showed amazing results. The design created a lot more lift at low air speeds while giving up very little of its top speed. Curtiss-Wright came back with its own wide blade design, keeping a more standard oval blade shape, but greatly increasing the total area. The Curtiss design had blade cuffs near the base that helped airflow smoothly into the propeller hub and lowered vibration. Both designs were huge improvements over the original thin blades. Republic Aviation got test propellers from both companies in April 1943. Testing started right away at Republic's location and at Wright Field in Ohio. Republic's test pilots checked both designs carefully. The tests showed that both the Hamilton Standard and Curtiss propellers gave almost the same performance boost. Climb rates got much better with either design. The Hamilton Standard was a little smoother because of its hydraulic pitch control. The Curtiss design fit better with the plane's existing systems and would be easier to add to P-47s already in other countries. Neither one was the clear winner in every way. The Army made a practical decision based on how many could be made. Both would be approved for building. Hamilton Standard propellers would go on new P-47s, made at Republic's Farmingdale factory, starting with the P-47 D-22 model. Curtiss paddle blade propellers would go on P-47s, made at the Evansville, Indiana factory, and be sent as upgrade kits for older planes in England. This decision focused on getting them out quickly, rather than doing a long evaluation to find the absolute best one. Using two suppliers would also make it harder for German intelligence to figure out what was happening. Production started in June 1943, but delays in making and testing them meant the first working planes didn't get to England until late December 1943. Through December, P-47s were flown to RAF Watton, where mechanics fitted them with the new propellers. The 56th Fighter Group, flying from Boxted in Essex, finished their switch by early January 1944. The group's leader, Lieutenant Colonel Hubert Zemke, right away saw what it meant for battle plans. The much-improved climbing power meant his pilots could fight German planes using upward tactics that would have been a death wish with the old propellers. Zemke set up serious practice through January 1944, creating new fighting methods made just for the paddle-blade Thunderbolt's better climbing power. He taught pilots to fight German planes in climbing spirals, moves that before would have left them open to attack. He created methods where chasing P-47s would pull up hard if enemy planes tried to climb away, turning speed into height, then dive back down on them with the built-up energy. With the thin-bladed props, these moves would have left the Thunderbolts struggling and slow. With paddle blades, they became lethal attack moves. January 4, 1944, was an important moment. The whole 56th Fighter Group flew its first mission, with all planes having paddle blade propellers. Pilots saw the difference right away. The planes climbed with a readiness that seemed impossible for fighters that weighed 7 tons. They kept their speed and height in vertical moves much better. Thunderbolts could now follow German fighters into climbing escapes without falling behind. The true test would be when they met the Luftwaffe over Germany. Their first time in a fight came during escort missions in late January and early February 1944. American fighters found themselves in situations where German pilots used their standard escape tactics, only to find the chasing Thunderbolts matching their climbs. At first, German pilots thought they were up against a new type of American fighter. When intelligence officers looked at gun camera videos that clearly showed regular P-47 Thunderbolts doing this, bewilderment grew among Luftwaffe groups. How could the same plane they had been getting away from for months suddenly match their climbing ability? March 6, 1944, gave clear proof. Lieutenant Colonel Zemke led 48 Thunderbolts on a bomber escort to Brunswick, flying Kikia. Over Berlin, Luftwaffe controllers sent more than 80 Messerschmitt 109s and Focke-Wulf 190s toward the incoming bombers. As the bombers got closer at 24,000 feet, German fighters attacked using their usual methods, diving through the groups, then pulling into steep climbs to get away from the escorts. All across the battle, Thunderbolt pilots matched the German fighters in vertical fights for the first time. Captain Robert Johnson, Lieutenant Walker Mahurin, and other pilots from the 56th Fighter Group caught German fighters in climbing fights and shot them down at high altitudes. The group reported 11 wins without losing a single Thunderbolt. More importantly, not one bomber in their group was shot down. German pilots who landed after the Brunswick mission told of worrying new things. American Thunderbolts were climbing right with them. Many pilots were sure they must have fought a new kind of fighter. When they were shown gun camera footage of standard P-47s doing what they described, their confusion only grew. Luftwaffe technical intelligence had to figure out what had changed. The first clue came from looking at the wreckage of a crashed plane in early February. A shot-down P-47D-23 was taken to the Luftwaffe Test Center at Rechlin. Engineers looking at the plane right away saw the propeller. The blades were much wider than those on Thunderbolts they had seen before. The technical report described the new design, but at first didn't understand how important it was, thinking the change probably helped with takeoff more than with fighting. This mistake made the German Air Force waste precious time. Through February 1944, more P-47 groups switched to paddle-blade propellers. The 4th Fighter Group got theirs early in the month. The 78th Fighter Group finished their change by the middle of February. By the end of the month, 6 of the 8 Thunderbolt groups in England were flying planes with paddle blades. Every group immediately saw a boost in their ability to fight well. German fighter losses went up as Luftwaffe pilots found their usual escape methods didn't work anymore. On February 21, 1944, Jagdgeschwader 26 lost 7 Focke-Wulf 190s in one fight with the 56th Fighter Group. The unit's leader, Major Klaus Mitusch, wrote a report after the battle showing his frustration. His pilots had fought according to their standard plans, breaking off with climbing attacks when in trouble. Every pilot who tried this move was shot down. Mitusch asked for an immediate answer on whether the Americans had a new fighter and if their current battle plans were still good. Luftwaffe intelligence had no good answer. The Germans' understanding got better by watching and studying wreckage. By March 1944, Luftwaffe intelligence realized that American engineers had changed the Thunderbolt's propeller to give it more lift at low air speeds, especially during climbs. Reports were sent out warning that American fighters could now fight in vertical combat, suggesting they should only fight when they had a clear energy advantage and get away by flying fast and level instead of climbing. But changing the battle plans for hundreds of fighter squadrons was impossible. Pilots who had stayed alive by climbing away for the past year couldn't just change their survival habits overnight. The size of the change became impossible to deny during Big Week, the huge bombing campaign against German aircraft factories in late February 1944. From February 20th to 25th, the 8th Air Force sent out over 3,800 bomber missions, escorted by more than 3,600 fighter missions. Most of the American fighters were P-47s with paddle blades. The Luftwaffe sent out over 2,000 missions to defend. The Germans lost about 355 fighters, with another 100 damaged too badly to be fixed. American fighter losses were only 28 planes. The kill-to-loss count had changed in a big way. Thunderbolt pilots found that paddle blade propellers gave them chances beyond just better climbing. The extra lift at low speeds helped them speed up faster out of dives, letting the Thunderbolts build up energy quicker after fast attacks. pilots could do dive and climb attacks over and over, keeping the upper hand through long fights. The better lift also helped with turning at slower speeds. While Thunderbolt still couldn't outturn Messerschmitt 109s or Focke-Wulf 190s in flat-level turns, they could keep enough energy in climbing turns to stop German fighters from getting a better angle on them. Major Francis Gabreski, leader of the 61st Fighter Squadron in the 56th Fighter Group, became the main supporter of what pilots called the climbing spiral. Gabreski would fight a German plane at the same height, usually around 24,000 feet. Instead of trying to outturn the enemy levelly, he would keep his speed and pull into a climbing turn. German pilots who saw the Thunderbolt climbing often followed, thinking the American plane would lose energy and be easy to attack. But with paddle blade propellers, P-47s kept their climb rate even while turning. Gabreski would spiral up through 2 or 3 full circles, slowly making the German plane lose its speed and height until the enemy either stalled or had to break away. At that point, with the German fighter slow and high up, Gabreski would turn, dive on his target, and open fire from a spot where the enemy had no way to escape. Gabreski was credited with shooting down 28 planes flying P-47 Thunderbolts, making him the top American ace in Europe flying a single type of plane. Almost all of these wins came after his squadron got paddle blade propellers. In interviews after the war, Gabreski always said the new propeller was the single biggest reason for the P-47's change. The update needed very few changes to how pilots were trained. The planes simply did what pilots wanted them to, keeping their energy in situations where Thunderbolts with the old blades would have failed. The paddle blade program showed American factory power working well. From the first idea to getting it to everyone took only 9 months. 2 companies designed, tested, and started making 2 different propeller designs. Republic Aviation changed production lines at 2 factories. The Army Air Forces created new repair methods, trained mechanics, and sent thousands of propellers across the Atlantic. No single part of it was groundbreaking. The success was in how fast and big the change was made. The United States found a major weakness and fixed it faster than Germany could find ways to fight back. German plane designers knew enough to make similar improvements. Both Messerschmitt and Focke-Wulf had skilled propeller engineers who understood the benefits of more blade area. But Germany's war economy in 1944 could not handle fast update programs. German aircraft production was running at full steam, focused on making existing designs in large enough numbers to replace battle losses. Bringing in new propeller designs would mean changing tools on production lines, rechecking plane performance, updating repair manuals, and training mechanics. Stopping production would cost thousands of fighters when Germany desperately needed every single plane. The Germans were stuck because of their overall position in the war. They needed to match the American improvements, but couldn't afford to stop production to do it. This showed a key difference in how America and Germany handled aircraft development. American designers accepted solutions that worked and could be done fast. The paddle blade propeller was less aerodynamically perfect than more advanced designs. It created more drag than thinner blades at high speeds. It was heavier, needing stronger hubs and pitch controls, but it fixed the immediate problem without needing years of work to perfect every detail. German designers often chased after perfect ideas at the cost of being practical. German propeller designers worked on advanced variable pitch systems that would, in theory, be better than the simple American paddle blades, but these advanced designs were mostly on paper and never got into service in large numbers. By March 1944, the paddle blade Thunderbolt had become the main American escort fighter in Europe. The plane was no longer a platform with serious flaws, waiting to be replaced by the longer-range P-51 Mustangs. The Thunderbolt had turned into a powerful fighter that could control the skies, beating German opponents in most fights. The effect on morale was huge. American bomber crews who had watched helplessly as German fighters climbed away through 1943, now saw enemy fighters being chased down and destroyed in climbing fights. German pilots, already feeling down because of the growing number of American planes, now faced a battle situation where their advantages had been canceled out. The Focke-Wulf 190, made to be better than the Thunderbolt in almost every way, now found itself matched or beaten in the one area, where it used to be clearly better. The Messerschmitt 109 could no longer count on vertical moves to get out of a fight. German fighter losses kept rising through the spring of 1944. Many experienced pilots who had survived years of fighting were shot down by Thunderbolts they thought they had gotten away from. The full effect was clear during the lead-up to D-Day. Through May 1944, American fighters carried out non-stop missions aimed at gaining control of the sky over France. Thunderbolts flew all over northern France, attacking German airfields, destroying planes on the ground, and fighting any Luftwaffe fighters that tried to stop them. P-47s with paddle blades were especially good in these fighter sweeps. When German fighters took off to intercept them, they usually had to climb from low altitudes to reach the American fighters, flying at 20,000 to 25,000 feet. Thunderbolts could now dive on these climbing German fighters, attack, and then climb away before the Germans could fight back. On June 6, 1944, as Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, Thunderbolts provided air cover all day long. German fighters that tried to attack the invasion ships or help German ground troops were regularly intercepted and destroyed by P-47s with paddle blades. The Luftwaffe managed less than 100 missions over the invasion beaches during the crucial first 24 hours. American fighters flew more than 8,700 missions in the same time. This huge advantage was possible because American fighters had kill ratios of 4-to-1 or better. The paddle blade propeller, by getting rid of the Thunderbolt's main weakness, was a direct reason for gaining the control of the sky that made the invasion possible. The numbers backed up what the pilots were seeing. In the first quarter of 1944, before paddle blade propellers were common, American fighters in Europe had an overall kill ratio of about 1.8-to-1 against German fighters. By the second quarter of 1944, with most American fighters having paddle blades, the kill ratio went up to 3.2-to-1. By the third quarter, it was 4.6-to-1. These improvements can't be blamed only on the propeller change. The number of American planes was growing, pilot training was getting better, and Germany was using new pilots to replace their growing losses. But battle reports make it clear that the better climbing power played a big part in these wins. The Curtiss Electric C542S paddle blade propeller, the most used version, had 4 blades and was 13 feet across. Each blade had a much larger area compared to the old thin blades. This big increase led to much better lift at low air speeds. The Hamilton Standard Hydromatic paddle blade put on later P-47s gave similar performance with some operational benefits. The Hamilton Standard design used hydraulic pitch control that was simpler and more dependable than the Curtiss Electric system. The total blade area was almost the same, and their performance in a fight was no different. The manufacturing work needed to give the P-47 fleet these new parts showed American factory power working on a large scale. Both Curtiss-Wright and Hamilton Standard made thousands of propeller sets between June 1943 and December 1944. Each set had 4 blades, a hub, a pitch control, and mounting parts. The blades were made from aluminum alloy, cut to exact airfoil shapes, and heat-treated to be as strong as possible. Each blade took about 14 hours of machine work, not counting the time to prepare the raw material and finish it. Getting these propellers to the units in England created problems with moving them. Each set weighed about 650 pounds and had to be handled carefully to avoid damage during shipping. The propellers were packed in wooden boxes with protective supports and sent across the Atlantic on cargo ships. The trips usually took 2 weeks. When they arrived, the propellers were taken to air depot centers, where mechanics put them on the planes. Putting one on took about 16 hours per plane, including taking off the old propeller, putting on the new one, setting up the pitch control systems, and doing tests on the ground. Between January and June 1944, air depot mechanics in England upgraded over 1,000 Thunderbolts, while also keeping the frontline fighter groups ready for action. The changes in battle plans for the paddle-blade Thunderbolt kept going through the summer and fall of 1944. Pilots created more advanced methods to take advantage of the better climbing power. One very effective tactic was the vertical scissors, where two Thunderbolts would fight a German plane in a climbing dogfight. As the enemy plane climbed to get away from one P-47, the second one would get in position to attack as soon as the German fighter lost energy and couldn't climb well anymore. The German pilot had an impossible choice: keep climbing until he stalled, making him an easy target for the Thunderbolt behind him, or level out to keep his speed, which would let the lead Thunderbolt make a diving attack. Another big change was using paddle-blade Thunderbolts for low-level ground attack missions. The better lift at low speeds let heavily loaded P-47s keep their speed and agility even when they were carrying 2,500 pounds of bombs or rockets. Pilots attacking German ground targets could start their attack dives from lower heights, which meant they were exposed to anti-aircraft fire for less time. After dropping their bombs, Thunderbolts with paddle blades could climb away from the target areas faster, again making them less vulnerable. Between April and September 1944, Thunderbolts flew more than 88,000 ground attack missions and had about 820 losses from all causes, a loss rate of less than 1%. The ability of paddle-blade Thunderbolts to do many things allowed them to stay in frontline service even when the longer-range P-51 Mustangs became available. Many fighter groups decided to keep their Thunderbolts specifically because the better performance made them extremely effective in many roles. The 56th Fighter Group, led by Colonel Hubert Zemke and later Colonel David Schilling, flew Thunderbolts for the entire war. Even though they could have switched to Mustangs, the group's pilots felt that the strong build and 8-gun firepower, along with the great climbing power from the paddle-blade propellers, made it better than the Mustang for what they did. German fighter pilots who lived through the war often mentioned the paddle-blade Thunderbolt as one of the best American fighters they fought. Major Gunther Rau, who survived with 275 victories, said in interviews after the war that the improved Thunderbolts were much more dangerous than the older versions. Rau said German pilots had to treat paddle-blade Thunderbolts with the same respect they gave P-51 Mustangs, knowing the American fighter could match German performance in most fights. The engineering lessons from this program shaped American aircraft development for the rest of the war. The fast development and rollout showed that small, step-by-step changes to existing planes could often be more valuable than making completely new ones. The P-47 itself kept getting better beyond the propeller change. Water methanol injection systems boosted engine power to 2,535 horsepower for short times. When combined with the paddle-blade propeller's better lift, this improved performance even more. The P-47M, which came out in late 1944, had both changes and could climb very quickly, matching or beating the climbing ability of any German fighter. The money spent to create and deploy the paddle-blade propellers was small compared to the benefits they brought to the war. The development costs for both Curtiss and Hamilton standard propellers, including wind tunnel tests, building prototypes, and flight tests, was about $3 million. In comparison, making a whole new fighter plane would have cost at least $100 million and taken 2 to 3 years before it could be used in combat. The paddle-blade propeller was exactly the kind of smart, effective improvement that made American air power hard to beat. Paddle blade propellers also showed how important the system of reporting and fixing problems between combat units and aircraft development was. The issues with the thin blade propellers were found by frontline pilots who wrote reports after their missions describing how German fighters got away with climbing moves. These reports went through intelligence channels to reach engineers who could find the real cause and create solutions. This feedback system worked pretty fast, with problems found in battle leading to engineering fixes within months. The German forces had similar feedback systems in theory, but they were increasingly broken by the chaos of Germany's worsening war situation. The strategic effect went beyond just air-to-air combat. Gaining control of the sky over Europe, which the improved Thunderbolts helped with a lot, let Allied ground forces move forward with very little trouble from German air power. During the breakout from Normandy in August 1944, American ground forces advanced under a cover of air superiority that was mostly kept up by Thunderbolts. German ground troops trying to retreat or move found themselves under constant attack from Allied fighters. The better climbing performance meant that German fighters trying to stop ground attack missions could be quickly intercepted and destroyed by escorting P-47s. The last major air battle with large numbers of paddle blade Thunderbolts happened during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 and January 1945. When German ground forces started a surprise attack through the Ardennes, bad weather at first stopped effective air missions. When the weather cleared up on December 23rd, Allied air forces launched huge attacks against German ground troops and supply lines. Thunderbolts with paddle blades flew hundreds of missions every day, attacking German tanks, trucks, and artillery. Luftwaffe fighters tried to interfere but were constantly chased off by escorting P-47s. By February 1945, organized Luftwaffe resistance over Western Europe had basically stopped. German fighter units were being pulled back to defend their homeland against the growing strategic bombing campaign. Paddle blade Thunderbolts had played a major role in gaining this air superiority, though their part was often overshadowed by the more famous reputation of the P-51 Mustangs. Military historians looking at the air war have sometimes played down the Thunderbolt's importance, pointing out that P-51s had more air victories and flew deeper into Germany. But this misses the key point that the Thunderbolt's transformation with the paddle blade propeller came at a vital time when German fighter forces were still a serious threat. Between January and December 1944, Thunderbolts were credited with destroying 3,082 German aircraft in the air while losing 824 P-47s to all causes in the European theater. This was an overall kill ratio of 3.7 to 1, as good as or better than other American fighter types during the same time. More importantly, the Thunderbolt's change from a poor climber to a capable vertical fighter happened when that ability was most desperately needed. The post-war story of the paddle blade Thunderbolts shows how quickly wartime advances can be forgotten. As jet fighters came into service, propeller-driven P-47s quickly became outdated. Most of the remaining Thunderbolts were taken apart for scrap or sold to other countries' air forces. The technical successes that made the paddle blade Thunderbolts effective fighters were surpassed by the groundbreaking power of jet engines. Few pilots who flew the improved Thunderbolts in combat moved into positions where they could make sure the propeller change got the historical credit it deserved. Yet paddle blade propellers are a fundamentally important kind of military innovation that should be recognized more. It wasn't a groundbreaking breakthrough that changed the basic nature of air combat. It was a step-by-step improvement that took an existing plane and got rid of its biggest weakness through fairly simple engineering. This kind of innovation, which is less exciting than brand-new technologies but often has a more immediate effect, was a big part of American military success during World War II. The ability to find problems, create practical solutions, put those solutions in place quickly, and do it on a large scale gave American forces key advantages. The engineering ideas behind paddle blade propellers are still relevant to modern military aviation, even with the switch to jet engines. The basic idea that blade area must be matched to the intended flight conditions rather than some theoretical maximum efficiency applies to turbine blade design, helicopter rotor design, and drone propulsion systems. Military engineers still have the challenge of balancing multiple performance needs across different flight situations. The German view of the paddle blade Thunderbolts provides serious lessons about the results of industrial and strategic weakness. German engineers understood propeller theory just as well as their American counterparts. German aircraft factories could have made improved propellers if they had been given the resources and the chance. But Germany's worsening strategic position, lack of resources, and increasingly broken industrial base made quick improvement programs impossible. Paddle blade Thunderbolts succeeded not because American engineers were smarter, but because American industry could support fast innovation while German industry could not. Wars are not won by single wonder weapons or brilliant plans or groundbreaking technologies. They are won by the combined effect of thousands of small, step-by-step improvements, each fixing a specific problem, each put in place efficiently, and each adding to overall superiority. The paddle blade propeller was one such improvement among many, but it came at a key moment when German forces were still able to challenge Allied air superiority. By getting rid of the Thunderbolt's main weakness, the change helped establish the air dominance that made the invasion of Europe possible and sped up Germany's defeat. This success, born from the ordinary work of propeller engineers rather than the dramatic actions of fighter pilots, deserves to be recognized as one of the key technological contributions to the Allied victory in Europe.